Again, we're just about a week away from our first launch opportunity. I think we're flying on booster 1083, which will be its fourth flight. We'll be flying on Dragon 207 on its third flight. This is, if you know the history of it, this is what Crew 1 went to space on. This is what I flew on previously for Inspiration 4, and now Polaris Dawn will go on, which is pretty cool. Very low time Dragon, which is nice. We will launch from 39A. We're expecting up to a 5-day nominal mission duration. We will launch into a 51.6 degree inclination and an orbital period of approximately 106 minutes, and that does vary based on the altitudes that we will be going to, which brings us to the next point here. We will Falcon will drop us off in a 190 by 1,200 kilometer initial orbit. At that point, we will check out the Dragon, make sure it's very, very healthy. We will pass through the South Atlantic anomaly, and then we will raise apogee up to our peak, which is 1,400 kilometers. That should surpass the Gemini 11 record. And then after approximately 10 hours, we will lower apogee to about a 190 by 700 kilometer orbit, and from there we will remain. We'll conduct our EVA before eventually phasing down and re-entering and splashing down either in the Gulf or the Atlantic. Now, we do have 3 launch T0s. We will eventually down select the day of the launch. The window first opens at approximately 0330 on the 26th and goes to approximately 0700. Now, you know, when you go higher into space, that comes with all sorts of potential challenges. You're putting a lot of energy into the vehicle, then you take it out. But there's other realities when you're up there too, which is a completely different micrometeorite orbital debris environment, obviously a different radiation environment. We'll talk a little bit about that. But Earth does a really good job as objects get closer to it to clean them up and burn them up, but that takes a really long time when it's higher up. So a lot of smart people at SpaceX figured out the optimal times for us to launch, which is why we have that launch window, and through vehicle pointing, so the attitude we're flying at, and then that low 190 perigee, we're able to mitigate a lot of that orbital debris risk during those launch windows. So then just to take you through the Polaris Dawn main mission objectives. So our first objective, which should take place during the first day on orbit, is an altitude record. So again, we'll go up to 1,400 kilometers. This is the farthest humans have traveled since the last time humans walked on the moon more than 50 years ago. And 2 of my crew members, Sarah and Anna, will be the women who have traveled farthest from the Earth ever, which I think is pretty cool. Now, why do this, right? As I mentioned before, when you go into this environment, you're dealing with totally different realities than, for example, when you would go to the space station. So again, it's a lot of energy going into the vehicle. It's a lot of energy to take out of the vehicle when you come back home. It is a different radiation environment. It is a different micrometeorite orbital debris environment. And we stand to learn quite a bit from that in terms of human health, science, and research. If we get to Mars someday, we'd love to be able to come back and be healthy enough to tell people about it. So I think it's worthwhile to get some exposure in that environment. Also, it informs vehicle architecture because generally speaking, vehicles don't like radiation. So that's why we're going to stay there for the shortest amount of time that's necessary to gather the data we want, and then we'll come back down. Our second major objective is the first commercial spacewalk. In this case, we'll take you through it a little bit, we are going to vent the vehicle entirely down to vacuum. There is no airlock on Dragon. That means all 4 crew members are exposed to the vacuum of space. 2 will remain inside the vehicle, and 2 in sequence will go outside the vehicle. When we are out there, we're going to make use of various mobility aids the SpaceX team has engineered, and it'll look like we're doing a little bit of a dance. And what that is we're going through a series of test matrix on the suit, and the idea is to learn as much as we possibly can about this suit and get it back to the engineers to inform future suit design evolutions. And you know, we do that. We're super proud knowing the massive amount of effort that went into making these suits, and just shortly Sarah is going to take you through what that development process is like. But it's not lost on us that, you know, might be 10 iterations from now and a bunch of evolutions of the soup, but that someday someone could be wearing a version of which that might be walking on Mars. And it feels like, again, a huge honor to have that opportunity to test it out on this flight. So we will learn as much as we can about that suit. The entire operation is scheduled to be about 2 hours from venting to repress. We're building a lot of margin there for anything unexpected to go on, but actual out of vehicle time, could be somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 to 20 minutes each while we're out there. Next, our third objective is we are testing out a new communication system. This is using Starlink laser links. So there is a placer that is mounted in the trunk of the vehicle that we will be flying on, and through beams of light, it will communicate to other Starlink satellites. And this is pretty cool. It is no small task to have two objects going 17,500 miles an hour communicating over a beam of light, but it has the opportunity to open up an entirely new communication pathway, not just for Dragon, but for armadas of starships or other satellites or telescopes out there, and kind of free up some of the burden on the existing TDRS and ground station infrastructure. And then we will, as I mentioned before, use every bit of the time in between approximately to accomplish approximately 40 science and research experiments that Anna will take you through in just a minute. Now this slide, just for give you an example of what depicts the various orbits that we'll be at relative to the International Space Station, Hubble, and where we flew previously on Inspiration 4. And this very cool rendering gives you a little bit of a depiction of what the Starlink laser communication should look like. And with that, I am very pleased to turn it over to Sarah to take us through development.
There it is. As Jared mentioned, this is obviously a development mission, and that's taken a ton of work across the SpaceX team in order to support these ambitious objectives. So I'm going to take you through some of the modifications both to the spacecraft as well as the spacesuit. And what you'll see throughout these slides is that much of the development effort has really been focused on safely executing this spacewalk. Maybe first, I'm just going to paint a little bit more of a picture of the spacewalk and what to expect. So actually, about an hour onto orbit, we'll start preparations for the EVA, where we begin a pre-breathe protocol. And this pre-breathe is really designed to help. On flight day 2, we'll get pressurized in the suits and actually go through a mobility demo, where we step through the sequence and movements inside the spacecraft and really make sure there was nothing missed in our training, that we're confident before we step outside. And then flight day 3 is the spacewalk. So that morning, we'll go through system checkouts on both the life support system and the suits before all of us get pressurized on 100% oxygen. We'll complete the final pre-breathe on 100% oxygen before we vent the spacecraft. Once at vacuum, EV1 will open the hatch before EV1 and EV2 serially will go outside and complete the test matrix that Jared mentioned of suit mobility objectives. Once complete, EV2 will close the hatch, and then we'll proceed with repressing the spacecraft, and then continue with the science and research for the remainder of the mission. So stepping into some of the spacecraft side modifications that were needed to actually accomplish this. One of the more substantial efforts was upgrades to the life support systems. This includes adding a lot more oxygen to the spacecraft so that we can feed oxygen to 4 suits through umbilicals for the full duration of the spacewalk. There have been upgrades and additions to the environmental sensing suite in the spacecraft to make sure we have really good insight both before, during, and after exposure to vacuum. And what you can see here is actually a new addition, an entirely new system, a nitrogen repress system. This is kind of a closeout shroud over 2 redundant nitrogen tanks that will be used to repressurize the spacecraft once we're complete with the EVA. With all of these life support system upgrades, obviously there's a ton of testing that needs to go into this. And that's both at a component level, but then also at a full-scale system level. So what you see here is the Dragon spacecraft actually going into a thermal vacuum chamber. And we ran the end-to-end sequence, both depressing the capsule, dwelling at vacuum, and then repressing the spacecraft using all the software, hardware, and integrated systems that we expect to use for this flight. Additionally, at vacuum, we performed a long duration dwell on the interior at vacuum so that we could actually bake out a lot of the materials on the inside, remove some chemicals that would off-gas in the vacuum of space before we're actually in that environment. There's been a lot of addition of new mobility aids to support suited mobility in the spacecraft. So you're actually looking up through the top of the spacecraft here at what we call the Skywalker. And this is a new structure that's been added outside the forward hatch that we'll use during the spacewalk, both as a handhold and footholds for some of the testing we'll perform. There's also new handholds both around and on the forward hatch of the spacecraft for interior operations, as well as some new camera views, both on the mobility aid and the nose cone to capture footage during the spacewalk. The forward hatch has also been upgraded to include a motor to assist with hatch opening. Here you can see the Starlink Wi-Fi router inside the spacecraft, and this connects to the laser system that Jared mentioned in the trunk called the plug-in laser. You might think getting internet might be as easy as just flipping that switch, turning on your internet, but it's not. We're talking about a laser sending information to a Starlink satellite that is moving at orbital velocity down to Earth and then back again. So it's been an incredible development effort by the SpaceX team. And on a personal note, I've taken specific interest in this development effort, and we have a special message that we will share with the world using this technology. So next, getting into what I actually noticed is on all of your badges, which I love, development of the EVA suit. So here it is, first generation SpaceX EVA suit. And I think it just looks so cool. I know we're all just feel so grateful to be able to test out this piece of technology. So what you see here is a design evolution of the new EVA suit. It is a design evolution from the IVA suit, the intravehicular activity suit. And it includes all sorts of technology, including a heads-up display, a helmet camera, an entirely new architecture for joint mobility. There's thermal insulation throughout the suit, including a copper and indium tin oxide visor that both provides thermal protection and solar protection. And then throughout, there's all sorts of redundancy, both in the oxygen supply feed to the suit, as well as all of the vent across the suit. It's an incredible suit. It's been a long journey to get here, and I'm sure, as you guys know, we didn't start here. This isn't where we began. So I'm going to take you through a little bit of the development journey to get here. So when we first started, we would come in every day for training, and pretty much every single day, we'd walk in and there would be a different suit. It would have a different glove, a different elbow, a different shoulder, and there was this constant iteration of suit components with the suit team to test and collect data. In parallel with that, though, we also had to develop training for the suit. So the SpaceX team didn't have the ability to put this really constantly evolving hardware into a pool. So they came up with a really novel solution of a suspension system that has kind of simulated physics that allows you to pressurize the suit, put on a harness, and actually go through operations as if you are weightless. So it's a really cool analog environment. They created our ability to do this both kind of in a vertical orientation simulator with all of our flight software, all of our vehicle interior, and then also in a sideways configuration that you can see here, to support manual hatch operations, all of the tasks we need to perform to get in and out of the spacecraft. So it was this kind of constant iteration with the SpaceX team, both on the training side and the suit side. Well, we went through this progression. We went and learned a lot, frankly. You might think that we would be extremely cold out in the vacuum of space, and actually we're more concerned about being too warm. So part of the learning we went through was trying to understand, quantify the thermal environments, what our metabolic rates will be. So what you see here is us pressurized in the suit. On top of that, you have an 8,000 meter down suit that you wear on Mount Everest. And then on top of that is another 8,000 meter down suit. So we're really trying to create an environment that doesn't have convection, looking at the thermals, looking at what we'll actually experience in these suits. Another aspect of development on this journey, as Jared mentioned, since Dragon doesn't have an airlock, the entire spacecraft is going to be going to vacuum. And I mentioned this kind of novel pre-breathe protocol where we're starting at about 14.5 psi and going down to about 8.65 as the last stage of our pre-breathe over a long period of time to slowly pull nitrogen out of our body and reduce our risk of decompression sickness. To validate this test, we actually spent 2 whole days in a vacuum chamber at NASA Johnson Space Center, and we went through the entire protocol, stepping down pressure and then ultimately performing a simulated EVA on breathing masks of 100% oxygen, stepping through the full operation. So here you can see us in the chamber during the simulated EVA transitioning onto oxygen masks. So this was kind of just a very cool experimental validation of this protocol. The final crewed test was actually wearing these incredible suits into the vacuum chamber. So we returned to Johnson Space Center, and we were in the front chamber, or the front airlock of the chamber B, and we went through basically a full depress sequence, dwell at vacuum, and repress. Looking at some of the manual hatch operations in the chamber, but really getting to see firsthand what it'll feel like in the suits as we go to vacuum. So at this point, the suit has gone through an incredibly extensive testing campaign. Some of them have been mentioned, but we've covered everything from life cycle testing, pressure testing, MMOD testing, extreme hot and colds testing, an entire campaign on ESD and flammability testing. It's been a really impressive amount of work by the SpaceX team to test this suit for flight. As a crew, we've spent probably more than 100 hours in this suit at this point. And here is actually a picture of the final checkout of our flight suits in the flight spacecraft at our test drive. We're really looking forward to testing this first generation of suit, and this is a great visual to kind of show you what to expect for the spacewalk.